Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club, where we talk about all the batshit crazy stuff that goes on in the world, and there is loads. So, on today's episode, then, I want to talk about the Alaskan Triangle. Last week, we spoke about the dark or the Black Pyramid, apparently hidden in Alaska. The question we need to ask, is it military? Is it ancient civilization or is it ancient alien? Okay, so we spoke about that last week, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. So this week, I thought, because it kind of rumbles nicely, that we'll talk about the Alaskan Triangle. So, Alaska. Right, Alaska features some of the most beautiful yet deadly and unremorseful terrain on the planet. It also hosts many strange tales of unusual phenomena, from UFO sightings and numerous disappearances, not only of people though, but in some cases entire planes. One of the cases, right, was a C-54 military plane. Now, 44 people were on board that Douglas C-54D, the US military passenger plane, as it seemingly vanished into thin air. Okay, and there it is. There's the picture, right? The incident happened during its journey from Alaska to Texas on the 26th of January 1950. No wreckage has ever been found or survivors. Now, the last known communication with the plane had come while they were over the Yukon Village in Canada. Shortly after, the sizable craft just simply vanished. Right now, a search mission was launched with both the American and the Canadian Air Forces contributing to the effort. The weather conditions were hazardous, and two planes actually crashed in the search for the C-54 on the 20th of February. Now, after 3.5 weeks trying to locate any sign of the plane, the search was called off. Now, there have been many theories to what happened that evening, and one of them is, it seems like it makes sense, right? Some state that the pilot may have been forced to land due to the bad weather, and given the inhospitable terrain they were flying over, the only place perhaps to have landed was on an iced-over lake. Now, it is thought if the people on board perished due to the elements, once the spring arrived, the ice would have melted and the plane would have vanished to the bottom of the water. The only problem with that theory, as far as I can tell, is that why haven't they checked to see? But hey, look, Alaska is massive, isn't it? But there's the plane, right? That is the C-54D US military passenger plane. It's obviously not the same one, but it is that model. Now, since 1998, there have been over 560 reported UFOs per the National UFO Reporting Center, and that is that, right? In Alaska, with a majority of sightings in the Alaska Triangle. Now, we find that the US military took a great deal of interest in tales of UFO activity in Alaska in the formative years, between the 40s and the 50s. For example, formerly classified FBI files tell of startling UFO encounters in Alaska between 1947 and 1950. So you can't dismiss it entirely, eh? Now, it was in August 1947 that a highly impressive account of a UFO incident involving two service members of the military was supplied to the FBI at Anchorage, right? So these two people, they've spotted a UFO and they reported it, okay, and the FBI got hold of it. So the report began. It says, this is to advise that two Army officers reported to the office of the Director of Intelligence Headquarters, Alaskan Department at Fort Richardson, Alaska, that they have witnessed an object passing through the air at a tremendous rate of speed, which could not be judged as to how many miles per hour. It was pretty fast, let's put it that way, right? So they couldn't determine what roughly miles per hour it was going, right? So according to the official report, the UFO was initially sighted by only one of the two officers, but he soon alerted his college to the strange sight. Right, so the object appeared to be shaped like a sphere and did not give the impression of being saucer-like or comparable to a disc. So instead of obviously your normal flying saucer, this was a sphere, right? Now, The first officer stated that it would be impossible to give minute details concerning the object, but it appeared to be approximately 2 or 3 feet in diameter and did not leave any vapour trail in the sky. So it didn't have a conventional engine, shall we say, propulsion system, right? Now, being the experienced officer that he was, in his first attempt to gauge the altitude of the object, and from a comparison with cloud formation in the area, he then determined that whatever the nature of the mystery sphere, it was roughly cruising at a height of more than 10,000 feet. And he noted that to be at such a height and still visible, in all probability, the UFO must have exceeded by a massive margin the initial size estimated. What he said was 2 or 3 feet. So he's thinking to himself, well, it's quite high up in the sky and I can still see it, right? Now, when questioned, the second officer gave a substantially similar account. The only marked difference being that, in his opinion, he considered the object to have been approximately 10 feet in diameter and compared it to half the size of a full moon on an ordinary night. Now, this discrepancy in size was apparently due to the fact that the second officer believed the UFO was more likely to have been about 3,000 to 4,000 feet rather than 10,000 as been suggested by his colleague. But like I say, it's all down to assumption. You know, when you're flying these planes, and look, I haven't flown one, so I'm only guessing, obviously. But, you know, there's a lot to take in, isn't there, right? So, the difference of opinion over the altitude and the size of the object may or may not have been significant. The important factor was, however, that both officers agreed that some type of anomalous object had most definitely been seen. And as the report concluded, the second officer pointed out that the remarkable features of this report was that it was definitely travelling against the wind. So it couldn't have been a balloon. No. If it was travelling against the wind, and I think that's why they highlighted that, if it's travelling against the wind, it couldn't have been a balloon. Right, so as the 1940s drew to a close and a new decade dawned, the FBI continued to receive and log high-quality UFO reports on a regular basis. Of those, one of the more credibly related to a noteworthy series of encounters that occurred in Alaska appeared in 1950, right? Now, forwarded to the FBI was an official US Navy source. The confidential 3-page intelligence report paints a startling picture of multiple UFO encounters involving the military. Titled Unidentified Phenomena in Vicinity of Kodiak, Alaska, it concerns a report of sightings of unidentified airborne objects by various Navy personnel on the 22nd and 23rd of January 1950. So it sounds like they were being buzzed. Right? The author of the report noted that Lieutenant Smith, USN, patrol plane commander of a P2V3, and I will stick it there, right? A plane of Patrol Squadron 1 reported an unidentified radar contact 20 miles north of the Naval Air Station, Kodiak, Alaska. Now, when this contact was first made, Lieutenant Smith was flying the Kodiak Security Patrol. A radar contact was made on the object 10 miles southeast of the Naval Air Station. Right, Lieutenant Smith checked with the control tower to determine known traffic in the area and was informed that there was none. Right, now, during this period, the radar operator, Kasky, reported intermittent radar interference of a type never before experienced. Contact was lost, but intermediate interference continued. So, do you think that was a UFO causing that interference? Sounds like it. Right, now, Smith and Kasky were not the only two to report that unidentified vehicles had intruded into Alaskan airspace. At the time of the encounters, the USS Tilbrook was anchored in the vicinity of Buoy 19 in the nearby main ship canal. Right, now, on board the Tilbrook was a seaman named Morgan, first name unknown, who was stand and watch. And at some point between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, Morgan reported that a very fast-moving red light which appeared to be of a weird nature, seemed to come from the southeast, moved clockwise in a large circle in the direction of and around the Kodiak, and returned out in general southeast direction, right? Perhaps not quite believing what he was seeing, Morgan alerted one of his shipmates, Carver, to the strange spectacle, and both watched as a UFO made a return flight. Now, according to the testimony of Morgan and Carver, the object was in sight for an estimated 30 seconds. No odour or sound was detected, and the object was described to have the appearance of a ball of fire 1 foot in diameter. Now, to me, that sounds like an orb, right? Now, the reports then recorded yet another encounter with the mysterious visitor from Kodak Security Patrol Lieutenant Smith. He reported a visual sighting of an unidentified airborne object at a range of 5 miles on the starboard bow. This object showed indication of great speed on the radar scope. The trailing edge of the blip gave a tail-like indication. So, Lieutenant Smith quickly advised the rest of the crew on board that the UFO was in sight, and all watched fascinated as the strange vehicle soared overhead at speed estimated to be around 18,000 miles an hour. So Smith climbed to intercept the UFO and tried to catch it. Needless to say, its high speed and remarkable manoeuvrability ensured that Smith's actions were futile. However, neither Lieutenant Smith nor his crew was quite prepared for what happened next. So, subsequently, the object seemed to be opening the range. Now, the official report reads, and Smith attempted to close the range. The UFO was observed to be opening out somewhat, then to turn to the left and come up on Smith's quarter. Now, Smith considered this to be highly threatening gesture and turned out all his lights. 4 minutes later, the object disappeared from view in a southeasterly direction. So if we just recap that report quick, Smith thought he was going to be attacked and went incognito. Right, turned all his lights off, hoping not to be seen. So, at 4:35 hours on the following day, Lieutenants Barco and Causa of Patrol 1 were conducting the Kodiak Security Patrol when they too sighted an unidentified aerial vehicle. Now, at the time of their encounter, the aircraft in which they were flying was approximately 62 miles south of Kodiak. For 10 minutes, Barker and Causa, along with the pilot, Captain Paulson, watched stunned as this mysterious object twisted and turned in the Alaskan sky. So you got 2 FBI reports there. Right. So the final comments on the encounter reads, now this is the official one, right? In view of the fact that no weather balloons were known to have been released within a reasonable time before the sightings, it appears that the object or objects were not balloons. If not balloons, the objects must be regarded as a phenomena, possibly meteorites, the exact nature of which could not be determined by this office. So that was the FBI's report on it. So the meteorite theory for this series of encounters is particularly puzzling and downright silly, isn't it? It goes without saying that meteorites do not stay in sight for an estimated 30 seconds. Meteorites do not close in on military aircraft deemed to be highly threatening. And they do not appear to be a fiery ball. Well, I suppose they do actually, but but look, the meteorite thing does sound a bit mad, doesn't it? Right. In other words, it seems safe to conclude that genuinely anomalous phenomena were indeed witnessed by experienced military personnel at Kodiak, Alaska, in January 1950, wasn't it? So it does seem that way. So the strange disappearance of Hal Bolks, right? Over 2 decades later, another strange plane disappearance captivated much of North America in October 1972. So Democrat Congressman Hal Bolks appeared to vanish from the face of the earth while being flown in a small plane over Alaska. Now, despite a huge rescue effort, the plane and its 4 passengers, including Bolks, has never been found. Now, according to Politico, so when words of the plane's sudden disappearance reached Washington, D.C., It kick-started the largest search and rescue operation seen up to that point in US history. A total of 40 military aircrafts and 50 civilian planes aided in the search, which spanned 325,000 square miles and lasted more than 3,600 hours. So, and it was never found. I mean, they tried their best and never found it. What's strange, I mean, others, however, right, state that the answer to what happened is more akin to theories about planes that have vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. There is a supposed vortex created by the relatively unusual magnetic fields present in the area, and it's this that's caused the plane to vanish. The area where the plane last commuted from is said to be in what refers to as the Alaskan Triangle. So, look, the plane's disappearance, but the trouble is, to be fair, Alaska is quite minute, isn't it? Sorry, not minute, that's totally the wrong word. It's quite sparse, it's huge. You know, if a plane went down, I don't think it would be easy to find. It isn't just planes that are said to go missing over the triangle, sometimes referred to as the Alaskan Bermuda Triangle. According to some reports, over 16,000 people have gone missing there since 1988, both tourists and locals alike. So, let's talk about Nathan Campbell. Now, the reason he's quite famous is he went out looking for the Black Pyramid, apparently, right? Now, he landed on a small single-engined float boat, and that delivered 40-year-old Nathan Campbell deep into some of the wildest countries and of the heart of Alaska in May. He confessed to the pilot on the way that he was on a quest to find the lost pyramid of Alaska. So he's already putting himself in dodgy danger, isn't he, if he's trying to find the pyramid. If he did find the pyramid, apparently it's well protected, you know what I mean? So, no one has seen Campbell since. When National Park Service officials were finally notified of his missing in mid-September, they launched a search in the remote northwest corner of Denali National Park. They did find supplies Campbell had cached at Carrie Lake, where the float plane dropped him, and some miles away, a collapsed tent. In the tent was a tattered diary that appeared to have been chewed on by rodents, but that's here nor there, really, right? The diary provided little in the way of clues as to what actually happened to the man. It's generally recorded the average day-to-day chores of life in camp, according to the authorities. The last entry in the journal recorded that Campbell left his tent to get water. Now, Denali Chief Ranger Erica Jostad said weeks after that the Alaska State Troopers have now said that he is missing. Now, as you can imagine, various theories have been put forth to explain the number of disappearances, though none have been conclusively proven. Now, some cryptologists and paranormal researchers believe supernatural forces or cryptids, like Bigfoot, might be responsible. Other suggested more grounded scientific explanations, pointing to the extreme environment, dangerous wildlife and rough terrain. You cannot dismiss that, can you? All right, so but, you know, out of the thousands and thousands of people that go missing, you have to consider that, don't you? Have you ever heard of a bloke called Ken Gerhardt? And I'll stick him behind me, right? Ken Gerhardt, a well-known American cryptologist and field researcher, has studied the Alaska Triangle extensively. He notes that some disappearances do defy explanation. This wasn't just someone being mauled by a bear or falling into crevices, he explained. There were people going about their daily lives, yet just vanished without a trace. So these are people that have not actually gone hiking on their own. They have just vanished. So Gerhardt research points out that while the Alaskan Triangle's rugged terrain and harsh climate can definitely account for some cases, many vanishings still remain unsolved. All right, on one of his research trips, Gerhardt experienced two people disappearing while him and his team were present. One vanished from a cruise ship, and another disappeared in a crowded tourist area on a mountain. Also, the native tribe who inhabit the area close to Janua firmly believe an evil spirit roams this area, who they call a Kushtaka. This spirit or demon is able to shapeshift and is said to kidnap those who become lost or venture deep into the wilderness. Now, look, I know that sounds mad, but I kind of do believe that. You have got to listen to these people, right? They have lived on the mountains and around that area for generation after generation after generation. If they think that there's an evil spirit, believe them, right? So other believe that there are unusual electromagnetic anomalies in the area that cause equally unusual phenomena. Theories range from this phenomena causing hallucinations and disorientation in people to a much more fringe theory that they reckon energy sometimes creates vortexes that pops you into another dimension. Well, why not? Eh? Why not? Why not? We said that when we were talking about alien bases, weren't we? So, more mainstream theories as to these all too real disappearances suggest that the area itself is some of the harshest and most remote parts of the planet. Should a person become lost or even injured there, they become a needle in a haystack, and they just can't be found. And you can believe it, can't you? But look, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that something weird is going on. You know, look at the UFO FBI reports. There is something going on. So, there have been numerous UFO sightings throughout Alaska. Perhaps the most famous occurred in 1986, the Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident. Now, while flying over northeastern Alaska on its way to Paris from Tokyo, the flight crew of Japan Airline Flight 1628 were just about to witness something that would change their lives. Right, so just after 5 p.m., Captain Teriyaki, who was an experienced pilot, noticed two strange bright lit crafts below and to the left of the plane. Now, as the Cold War was still in full swing, and due to Alaska's close proximity to the Soviet Union, Teriyaki assumed that these were US military planes who regularly patrolled the Alaskan skies. However, he came to the realisation that the crafts were following him. Well, it was a bit weird, right? So, several minutes later, the craft suddenly appeared dead in front of Flight 1628. Their light shone so brightly in the cockpit of the plane that Teriyaki claimed he could feel the warmth on his face. Communications from the plane to the control tower on the ground were also affected, periodically becoming scrambled with interference. And despite the object flying steadily in front of the plane, radar operators could not see anything, right? Then, as quickly as the object appeared in front of the plane, they moved back to the left of it. However, now the crew could see a much larger craft, and I'll stick the picture behind me, right? That's Teriyaki. Teriyaki at first described it as a flat, pale white light, but soon realised that he was looking at a mothership that he described as being as large as two aircraft carriers. Now, bearing in mind the vicinity of where he's seeing it over Alaska, right, a mothership. Now, by the time air traffic control aircraft had launched two planes to investigate, the object had disappeared. So, unlike many airline pilots who avoid reporting such experiences, Teriyaki was eager to do so. So much so that when he did speak to the press, Japan Airlines removed him from pilot duty and instead gave him a desk job. So he was proper told off, wasn't he? The official findings of the inquiry into the sighting were released the following year and stated that although the airlines firmly believed the pilot's description of what they saw, there was not enough proof to support the versions of events. So the airlines come out and gone, look, you know, we do believe him, but we can't prove it. And as I say, he was grounded. But look, the JLO Flight 1628 incident is just one of many alleged sightings in the region. And some people believe they know why the area is such a hotbed of such activity. And I will quickly skim, because we have spoken this, right? According to the alleged remote viewer Pat Price, Mount Hayes, one of the most beautiful and arresting mountains in Alaska, is, in fact, an alien base. Perhaps more chilling, if you subscribe to his theory, these aliens manipulate your mind and they can use you by just thinking about you, all right? A remote control of us kind of thing. Now, There have been numerous sudden faults reported from aircraft pilots following overnight haze. Recently declassified FBI reports also tell of how the government were carrying out very real and genuine investigations around the area. And Alaska, as a whole, in the late 1940s and 50s, was a hub for FBI investigations. They were really into it. So, if they were really into it, there must have been something going on, eh? Now, there were several reported cases from experienced pilots and military personnel that were fully documented in the released files. It is clear the FBI was taking the reports of UFOs in the area very seriously. So, look, what do you think? What do you think of the Alaskan Triangle? So, if we recap quickly, we do know that people go missing for non-UFO, non-phenomenal reasons, you know. Sadly, they get attacked by animals. They get lost, they come to the elements. So it's a very tricky one, isn't it? Planes also do go missing as well. But that doesn't sort of like take away the fact that there have been loads and loads and loads of UFO sightings in that area. So we can call it a UFO hotspot, can't we? So look, what do you think? The Alaskan Triangle. Please drop me a line, leave me a comment, like, subscribe and ding that notification bell if you can. And I will catch you on the next one. Thanks very much.